But the next series that we're going to jump into over the next month and a half or so is this idea of what is the church and how does it work, right? For many of us, we maybe have grown up in the church, and church is just like, well, my grandparents did it and my parents did it, and so I do it. It's kind of this chain. Some of us are like, my grandparents didn't do it, my parents didn't do it, and my life was going to self-destruct. That's why I'm here, and if I feel like I get too far away from this, it's what am I going to do? All of that's in their good space. But really kind of, I'm hoping over the next few weeks here as we go through this thing that we will see there is something beautiful about the church. There's ugly parts. There's parts that are rough and tough and hard to do. That's the us part sometimes. Right? But there's something beautiful about the church. And yesterday I was at the beach, went to Reed State, and it's just something about being at the ocean when you see, just something about like something that's so big that it just keeps going. Just, you kind of start to feel smaller and smaller in a good way. You start to feel smaller. Same thing happens when you see a mountainscape or you're up on a peak and you see the vastness of what's around you. Sometimes church becomes, that's something we do, that's where we go. But there's a perspective you can stand back and go, there's something beautiful here. It's something so big. I get to be a part of something bigger. Something that goes through past, present, future, cultures. It tears down all kinds of barriers, does all kinds of things in the world. And it is just like, wow, this is something. The other reason why I want to go through this, and I hope, is as an individual church, and today we're going to talk more about the broader church, churches can get in this thing what we call mission drift. It's kind of a military term used in, if a group or a platoon or whatever, these people, person has a mission, and they're trying to accomplish that mission, but over time, other things start to kind of creep in, being like, well, to solve this mission, well, if we kind of do this thing over here, that might help with that. The next thing you know, you're not really going towards the mission anymore. You've got some other agenda going on. You're way off. You've creeped just a little bit. Right? If you've ever used a compass before, which is kind of a lost art, just being off a few degrees over a few miles is a big difference. Right? As you start going and going and going and going and going. And as a local church, we want to see, okay, where's in our individual selves and corporately, are there places where we mission drift and we get kind of off task? And how do we pull that together? The kind of the name, if you will, the series is this Ecclesia, spelled with two C's, which is the Latin version. The Greek, in our Greek Bibles, we have two K's. And it's this idea of the gathered community, the called out ones. They're coming together. In the Westminster Confession, which some of our friends in town are probably pretty excited about. They might not be excited that we're reading it, but they'll get over it. It says, what is the church? It is the whole number of the elect who have been, are, and shall be gathered into one under Christ the head. Right? It's everyone who's ever come to this place where they've needed Jesus in their life. They come into this thing. But there is something about the gathering of it. It isn't just, the belief system of Christianity or the belief system of Jesus. No, it is the embodied belief system. The embodied. It's in people. It is in us. We carry the church. Not one person is the church, but it's the body, the people coming together. It has nothing to do necessarily with buildings. Buildings facilitate that. It has nothing to do with denominations. We'll talk about that. One of our weeks is going to be talking about why there's so many churches. Now, before we get into some scriptures and stuff, I just want to do a quick little history lesson because sometimes we have a little gap in our thinking of history. And as a Vineyard Church, we are so young on the game that we don't claim too much as far as how cool we are. Right? But you go to some churches, they're pretty proud that they're, we talk about some of the Methodist stuff here. They've been doing this for a while, right? Or Baptist or whatever different, they're pretty excited about that. But Christianity has been going on for a while. Thousands of years, people have been following after Jesus. And after Jesus, the church kind of forms together, and there's a little bit of a misnomer in some of our minds, and some of our books, and some of our teachings that the early church was just like butterflies and rainbows, and they all just loved each other so well, and they just like frolicked in the sunlight. No, they fought just like they fight today. So that's going to be one of the things we go through. As you maybe look at the larger church, and it's always been pretty dysfunctional, right? It's those human part that kind of just gets in the way. But for the most part, the church did kind of stay together for quite a while. For almost 1,000 years, they stayed together. And there's this part in time in history where this thing is called the Great Schism. It's true, maybe some of us have heard it before, where the east and the west of the church split in different directions. And some of that had to do with geographical area, right? You couldn't just dial up on the phone and be like, hey, we had a misunderstanding, can we talk about it? Right? There was different languages going back and forth, so things would get mistranslated. There was different stuff going on, and one of the times that really kind of severed the church was, and some of it you read through and you're like, this is so petty. Like what is going on? Which isn't too different than some of our stuff today. But the bishop in Rome says they're looking at their creeds. We talked about creeds a number of months ago. They're looking at their creeds, and they're going through, and they're having some issues in their local area about the Trinity. We're going to get into that as we go through. I think the Trinity, and there's this one little line in there that says the Holy Spirit was sent from the Father. And they said, and the Son. They just added those two words, and the three words, and the Son. It's two in the Latin word, right? And the Son, right? And they added that in there, and the people over on the other side of the Mediterranean said, wait a minute, you can't just do that. And they're like, yeah, we just thought it'd be better to do that. They go, no, we talk about these things, we fight, we yell, we have councils, like, this is our tradition, right? They didn't know they were Americans yet. They were like, we fight about this. And Rome just said, I'm doing it, sorry, this is how it's going to be. And so, as mature people, they said, well, I'm excommunicating your bishop. And they go, well, I'm excommunicating your bishop. And they all excommunicate each other. And we have, this is the oversimplified version. You can go and read more of the details in this if you're really into that. And so you have this east and west split where the Roman Catholic Church breaks off from the Orthodox Church. And for many of us here, we're not familiar with the Orthodox Church. It's actually a really interesting tradition. We're more familiar with Catholicism. But Catholicism and Greek Orthodox, they move along, they go in separate directions, they keep excommunicating each other and changing rules to make sure the other guy's not right and the other guy's right, and they keep doing that for a while. And then, about 500 years later, a guy named Martin Luther comes along, and throughout the church history, there was always people who challenged the church, who sometimes challenged something that they should have, and then they had some other baggage in there, and the church would persecute them, sometimes right and wrong. But if you know that kind of period of history, that 500 years, the church was rather effective at squishing opponents. Really a dark time, called the Middle Dark Ages, right? There's something about it. It was pretty dark, and they would kind of squash these things. But right around the time that Luther's coming to be, there's this thing called the printing press, right? A little bit of history. The printing press changes it all because you can't just go and kill the guy and then kill his followers and be like, well, that was a nice little rebellion, it's gone, right? And that was kind of the church. And the church and state are really mixed together, and it's hard to tell who's who and what's what. But Luther challenges the church. They had some interesting ideas about how to get to heaven. You know, if you pay a little extra money, you get a better seat in heaven, you know, and it just got a little corrupt. It got all about kind of gathering money. And Luther reads the scriptures for himself and says, this is not right. And this is where the Reformation happens. And Protestantism, if I can use my tongue today, Protestants come out, and Protestants mean protest. They are the protest movement of the church. And that's kind of the stream that we fall in. And that stream, being called the protest movement, splints and splatters all over the place, of course, because that's like their defining features. We don't listen to anybody, and we do what we want. And so there are all these different movements come in there, and that's where Protestantism comes in. So you have this overarching story of conflict and splits and arguments over truth and doctrine as they're moving forward. And I'm hoping in this week that we can we'll talk about some of those differences, some of those things that's going on in the next few months. But I just hope that we can, even with all those confusion, even all those different things, see the beauty in the church. See the beauty, that there is something here, and we do not need to fight and scratch and claw against every whim and everything that's out there. It actually becomes counterproductive. It becomes, it doesn't look good either as we go out. But we'll talk about how there is some lines in there. In Psalms 133, it says, "How good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity." Something about when we come together in unity. Now, I think the true story of the church, though, starts way before this story of even Jesus coming on the scene, even Pentecost and all these places where people will say, this is where the church started. It actually goes way back. If you have a Bible, or if you have it on your phone, you can look up Genesis chapter 12. Genesis chapter 12. In Genesis chapter 12, we pick up a man named Abram. Abram is he's kind of just doing his life, he's doing his thing, and he gets called by God to go to a place that God will show him, and he gets this kind of thing here. He says, God says to Abram, says, the Lord had said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you. And whoever curses you, I will curse. And all the peoples of the earth will be blessed through you." So God is calling Abraham, who eventually becomes Abraham down the road. He calls Abraham, he says, look, I am going to bless you in such a way that this thing is going to explode, and it's going to bless all people. It is going to bless all people. And what this shows us is, one, God is looking for a people. Right? He's not just looking to be in the world and do something. No, he's looking for people to gather to himself. He starts here with Abraham, and he pulls him and saying, I'm going to bless you. You're going to create this people, and this people is then going to bless even more people, and all the nations will come together in this thing. And I really see here what God is saying is like, look, through you, Abraham, through your faithfulness and through your generation, I'm going to bring the Messiah. And then once the Messiah is here, that is going to be a blessing that's going to break out of the nation of Israel and into all people. And all people are going to be able to come and receive the blessing of Christ. This is the blessing of salvation, the blessing of the Messiah. Again, in Exodus 6, the Lord says this, "I will take you as my own people, and I will be your God. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God, who brought you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians." Again, God is saying, I will take you as my people. The church has always been a people coming together. It's more about what's going on in our hearts than what funny hats we might wear, or incense, or music styles, and all the things that we use to separate ourselves. It's what is God doing in us? In Hebrews 10, it says this, it goes through, it says, "Not giving up meeting together, as some in their habit of doing, but encouraging one another, as all the more as you see the day approaching." Right? He's saying, hey, people get together, and some people are like, don't do that. I don't do that. And right now, it is becoming more and more kind of countercultural to be in this room right now. It's becoming more and more like, you do that? That's kind of weird. Why would you do that? Right? There was a time in our history where this is what you would do. You would just go to church. Everybody went to church. You did those things. But he's saying, hey, don't give up. Don't give up on this thing. Don't move away from it. Even as things get darker and they feel like things are coming more and more to a head, do it even more. Get together even more. That's why at church we do small groups, and we do, go to the beach, and we do all these things. Like, get together even more. The day is approaching. Many in our time are starting to give up on church. Even church is starting to give up on church. Going like, this just doesn't work. It doesn't do anything. And I just sometimes wonder, like, does it not work, or are we not using it right? Right? I used to do some carpentry, and it was always kind of a joke. To a carpenter, every problem's a nail, and every tool's a hammer. Right? You just kind of One, a hammer can do a lot of things. You've never seen that, but usually has them do more with temperament than it does with tools. But it's like, am I using this thing right? Am I actually doing it the way it was designed? Or am I doing it the way a tradition has given me? Am I doing it in a way that I feel comfortable doing? Am I doing it in a way that I feel super safe and it's not really getting to me? And I'm hoping over the next few weeks, we'll have to look at it and go, you know what? I don't know if I'm always using this thing right, this church thing. We're going to end this off with a few things that we will unpack throughout the next few weeks to come. The goal of the church, the gathered people of God, that He desires to have. This is what's so great about the church, is God desires to have it. He will make it happen. One, we are to glorify God. We glorify God in our services when we gather, we worship God, we pray to God, and then with our lives, we glorify God. The church is to show and tell the world of the goodness of God, the great love of God. This is also known as evangelism. We're to tell the world of the love of God, that God has come, not to bring a sword, but to bring love. We're to tell people and invite people into a deeper level of apprenticeship unto Jesus. Apprenticeship unto Jesus. That, hey, Jesus showed us this way to be, and if enough of us could get together and follow this way of Jesus, it would just give us this hope, it would give us this different space in the world, also known as discipleship. And then the church is to come alongside the marginalized and the broken of society with hope and love. If a church could figure out how these things, how to glorify God, how to tell people about the greatness of God and the love of God, and themselves, and invite others into a deeper apprenticeship of Jesus, and then come along the marginalized and the broken, man, the world would be transformed. The world would be transformed. Maybe we've had a little mission drift along the way. Some of those things have taken on new meanings and new strategies. Some of it's maybe more based in fear and control management than it is about great love for God and His people. As a church, we have a little slogan, I guess you'd call it. I don't know what we put on there, but we have this thing on our material that say, love God, love people, create good. Love God, love people, create good. And it's interesting is if you get in a spot where you're like, I just want to be like one of those. Yeah, I just want to love God. I just love worship. I love the song. I love reading the scriptures and reading my book. The love people part, I'm not so sure about that. Create good. I don't know what that means. It sounds like some woke crap or something I saw on TV. Right? If you have that as your work, that's great. That's where you are. That's where you are. You've gotten that far. But can I tell you, you're going to be prickly. You're going to hurt people. You're going to push people away from God. You're not going to join in God and His mission. And maybe you say, I don't know about the God stuff. I just want to love people. That's great. Loving people's good. But people are prickly. They hurt. Right? And if you don't have a God that you can come to and say, oh God, are you sure this is your mission? You sure you want these people? You sure you want to do this? And God goes, yeah, and patches you back up and kicks you back into people. You go back and forth. If you go into loving people without God, I pray for you. It's going to be hard. And then if we love God and we love people, but we have no intent to create good in the world, well, we become very hypocritical. We lie to ourselves and deceive ourselves that the people we love are usually the people we want to love, are easy to love, and we just don't love those people. Creating good means stepping into the brokenness of the world to see it made whole. And once we start to do that, we will need God more and more, and we will need people more and more around to help us in that. And I think that cycle just keeps repeating. Loving God, loving people, just needs to strengthen, creating good, keep going through this. And these things don't happen in a Sunday morning, particularly. These are things that the church gathers. We're going to end on this. The church gathers together. They get encouraged. They sing some songs to the Lord. They read some verses. They pray. There's some kind of repetition that happens in that community, however they choose to do it. And that encourages folks to then scatter. Right? To scatter back into the world that the goodness of God, the love of God, the apprenticeship of God will be sent out into the world. The goal is not to gather a bigger church, unless that church sends people back out into the world to be better people. Right? If it gathers a bunch of people and they go, oh, we just love God, or we're missing the boat, it actually just hurts us. It's like taking one step forward and shooting ourselves in the foot. I don't know why I can't get any progress. So why don't we stand together? We are going to take communion. As a church, it's part of our system of spiritual formation. We do communion every Sunday. And the goal of doing communion every Sunday is to remind ourselves that everything that we do, every dream that we have, every angst that we wish we could make right, needs to be done through the power of Jesus. We don't enter into our parenting without Jesus. We don't enter into our marriage without Jesus. We don't enter into the brokenness of the world, the brokenness within us without Jesus. It is in Him that we find life. And we need Him like we need food. We need Him like we need nutrients in our life. And it sets us, hopefully, back on course for another week. Taking Him in us, the hope of glory for the world, for ourselves. The way we do communion here is we come down the center aisle to receive the elements, and we go back out to the sides. If you're in groups, we have some little extra pieces of bread on the side. You can share the juice and use the bread there so we don't run out. And if this opportunity is for anyone who says, I just want more of Jesus. I want to join in his mission of seeing the world made more whole, creating good. If you're not familiar with what's going on, or you feel kind of uncomfortable, just sit and watch. That's okay. When everyone starts moving, no one will even notice what's going on over here. It'll be fine. But I just ask you to watch what's going on in the room and watch what's going on in here. So why don't we start to come down the center aisle here to receive the elements. And if you could just hold them, we're going to take them together. Stand. There's something about communion that we are doing this together. Communion, we're communing together. There's also something that's very individual about this. And we are, in a way, we are confessing need to God, saying, God, I need you. I remember growing up as a little Baptist church, and I was that kid in your Sunday school class that come once a month and was a pain in the butt. So Sunday school teachers, just pray. But anytime there was an offer being like, they would talk about Jesus, and they'd say, you've done things wrong as a person, as a 6-year-old boy. Like, I figured that out pretty quick. Like, yeah, I can be kind of a jerk sometimes. I think about myself sometimes over others. I don't put others first, and I don't, God, I don't even know how to put Him first, and maybe I've done some things that have upset Him in that way. And they would say, well, Jesus died on the cross for your sin. His broken body and His poured out blood and His resurrected body. If you believe in Him, you put your trust in Him, you follow after Him, He will welcome you into this life where He will forgive brokenness that you have, the sin that He'll forgive that and welcome you into restoring yourself and restoring the world. They didn't use those words. I wish they did. I probably would have been more excited. But and every time that would happen, I would be like, I'm signing up for that. And all the other kids would look at me like, he's getting saved again today. I just thought it was so exciting. And I wouldn't go to church for a few months. I'd show up, and they would, the little lady with the flip chart would tell me about how to know Jesus. I go, I'll do that again. Like if you know that you know that you know. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe there's a gap in there. But I want to be a part of God is doing something. And He is making a way to join Him and be a part of Him. I want to be part of Him. So every time we take communion, we are again saying, I want to do that. I want to do that. And if you're here this morning and you're like, I've never really come to that place where I'm believing, I'm trusting that in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, I will find the most life. I will find the most hope, and I will find the restorative nature of myself and the world. I've never really stepped into that. What I'm going to do in a moment here is I'm going to pray a prayer, and in your heart, in your being, just agree with it or repeat it with me. And I believe that God is always listening. He is always there just waiting, saying, I want to be with you. I want to partner with you. I want to see things more whole for you and the world around you. But I just need you to lean on me a little bit. That's how this works. You need to lean on me, he says. You need to trust in me. For those of us that have been in that place, it's always good to sign up again. To lean, to trust in him. So let's pray. Oh, Jesus. I know, left to myself, I join in with what I want. I do things that hurt others and hurt myself. I recognize that is sin. That is a brokenness that I bring upon myself. But Lord, I recognize that in your death and resurrection, and leaning on you, trusting in you, trusting that you, God, love me, you hold me, you care for me, that I can be free, that I can live a life that is truly alive. So God, in this moment, I surrender myself deeper to you. I open myself to you and say, God, show me your way. For I need you. I need you like my body needs food. So you hold your elements, you hold the bread, which signifies the broken body of Jesus. Would you take and eat? And as you hold the juice, it signifies the poured out blood of Jesus for the forgiveness of sins. Take and drink.